It's so good, it's delicious, it's perfect. The cabbage is really pretty. Can't even talk. Guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Sam's Home Kitchen. My name is Sam Lin. I am a home cook who's really passionate about sustainability and, more importantly, save money by making things at home, and hopefully I can be helping you guys do the same in your own kitchen as well. So it has come to that episode. One of my favorite things to make, it's dumplings. Plenty of dumpling recipes out there, but my mission is here to help you save money. So now cabbage is slightly on the cheaper side. I got this big boy, at least 2 kilos I would say. Actually, let's measure it out. Probably not 2 kilos, but at least 1 kilo. My scale gave up, so over here, this is $2 per head. Not the cheapest, but I think it's a reasonable price, and you can probably get this price if you go to the right place all year round. And then obviously we'll need some pork to make some dumplings. And rather than buying packaged mince, I've got some little tip for you. So if I had to be making dumplings, I normally just buy some roast meat. So the cheapest I can get, standard price, $7.50 a kilo. It's much cheaper than mince, and honestly, you probably get better quality meat out of this and just grind your own. None of these are super reduced or on super special or whatever, but just buy things in bulk in one piece and then just process it yourself. You're able to reduce the packagings, and also you're going to be able to make food for much cheaper. So that is exactly what we're going to do today. We'll grind our own meat, we'll cut up the cabbage, and then also we'll be making our own dumpling wrappers. And I'm going to show every single thing to you. Might be a bit long, I don't know, but good things come with effort, right? So making your own dumplings, start almost everything from scratch, and that is the secret to save money. Enough of my talking. Before we get into the recipe, if you can spend 1 second and smash the like button down here, that would really help out with my videos and my channel as well. Thank you so much for doing that, and let's get started. So today, we're going to make our dumplings from scratch, so we'll be separating our ingredients into 2 parts. On the right, we'll have our dough for the dumpling skin, and to the left, we'll have our dumpling fillings. For the dough, we'll be needing some flour and then some water. Optionally, you can add in some salt to strengthen the gluten in the dough for some chewier dumpling skin. For the dumpling fillings, I'm going classic with some pork and cabbage. In order to keep the cost down, I got some pork shoulder, and we'll be grinding our own meat rather than buying pork mince. Grinding our own mince not only gives us control of what goes into the mince, but also saves us at least 20% of the cost on meat. Next, we've got some cabbage. Green cabbage is the better option here. It's denser and will come out crunchier for the dumplings. For the seasoning, we'll be adding some white pepper, sesame oil, some salt, and MSG for the filling. We'll put these aside and get started. First off the list, we're going to trim our pork shoulder. This slab of meat is about 1.6 to 1.7 kilo, and we'll butcher it into usable sections. We'll be cutting through some tougher skin, so making sure the knife is nice and sharp is crucial here. Cut open the packaging, and we want to take the meat out of the elastic stringy thing. Open up the piece of meat, and we can see most of the roast is the shoulder layer just under the skin. Next step, we want to use our knife and carve along the tissue to preserve the muscle. It's quite straightforward in the sense that meat will tell you where to cut. All we need is a sharp knife and just follow the muscle grain. Use your other hand to pull the meat away from the main piece and get the knife in to separate out and cut into the connective tissue. The shoulder piece is very well exercised, hence slightly tougher, but packed with flavour. After my very average butchering demonstration, I was able to separate out 4 main pieces of pork with about 700 grams of offcuts, which is exactly what we're going to use for our pork mince today. We'll put the bigger chunks of meat in our reusable freezer bags to freeze for other uses. They can be stored frozen for up to 6 months. Coming back, we're going to deal with the offcuts here. You can see they are super flappy and soft here. One secret to grind some consistent meat at home is to grind the meat while it's slightly frozen. The slightly harder texture will allow the non-commercial blades to cut through easier. We'll pop the bowl in the freezer for about 1 hour or until it's half frozen. So it's been an hour and we can see that the pork pieces are more on the stiffer side. Next, I set up my meat grinder and just crank it out. The difference between defrosted meat versus slightly frozen meat is that the stiffness in meat will allow the blades to cut the meat instead of turning it into mush. And that is how you can make mince at home, cheaper and healthier. I often find cheaper mince containing more fat than desired, so mincing our own, we can make sure the meat to fat ratio is exactly how we want it. So it was getting late at the time of me finishing grinding the meat, so I had to put it away and come back the second day. As mentioned previously, we have about 700 grams of mince here. Next thing to prep is our cabbage. We want a 1:1 ratio for our meat to cabbage. And as always, to be able to achieve that, we'll be using a scale. I cut the cabbage in half and it was almost 900 grams, which is not too far off the weight of the mince, so I just went with it. I started with cutting the cabbage into 1/2 centimeter strips alongside. Turn the strips 90 degrees and cut the cabbage into cubes. Nothing fancy here, we just want small pieces of cabbage that will be able to be wrapped in dumpling skin. Put them in a bowl, continue finishing up the rest of the cabbage. I know here it looks like we've got a crap ton of cabbage. What we're going to do is to salt the cabbage to draw out some moisture. With the combined weight of meat and cabbage at around 1600 grams, we want 2% of that in salt in our cabbage to draw the moisture out and seasoning our filling. Put the bowl on the scale and in it goes 32 grams of salt. Once the salt is in, we'll mix it through, rub it in thoroughly and give it a toss if that's what you're into. And we'll put it aside for 30 minutes while we prep the dumpling dough. This dumpling dough is pretty much the same as the noodle dough we used in one of my earlier videos. I'll put a link in the description if you haven't checked that one out already. After some quick googling, I found supermarket dumpling wrappers selling for about 10 cents per piece. Our dough today costs us 50 cents, which will give us 70 wrappers. By making our own dough, we're able to save 93% of the cost on wrappers. Just let that sink in for a little bit. To save us some time, I'm going to use my KitchenAid to mix a dough. With 1600 grams of fillings, I mix 500 grams of flour with 250 grams of water. That was pretty much a perfect amount of dough for my fillings. It is a little bit hard to gauge sometimes how much dough is needed, but it's always a good idea to go a little bit higher than you think. Worst case scenario, the excess can always be turned into noodles. Flour in, water in, and we'll let the mixer do the groundwork for us. Because it's a slightly lower hydration dough, let the mixer run until the dough is roughly combined. Next, we want to transfer the dough onto the bench to further combine it. The dough should be nice and dry and slightly on the tougher side. Knead until no loose dough is hanging around and the dough should start to feel smoother. Once it's all combined, we're going to let it rest for 20 minutes. Instead of using cling wrap or plastic bag and generate unnecessary waste, just leave the dough on the bench and cover it with a bowl. 20 minutes is up, we want to give the dough another kneading until it's nice and smooth. Then we set it aside to rest for another 20. Next, we want to check on our cabbage. It should start to feel slightly wilty. Give it another mixing, and now you can massage the cabbage a bit to encourage the draw of moisture. Leave it aside and we'll check on it when we check on the dough in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, we can see there is a puddle of cabbage water on the bottom, which is exactly what we want. Pour it out of the bowl, and next, we want to add in our mince. Because we've already seasoned the cabbage, we don't need to add additional salt to the mixture. But here is where we can add in some white pepper for some high-pitched fragrant notes. And some sesame oil for the same purpose. Thoroughly combine the cabbage and mince with the seasoning. Optionally, we can add in some sneaky MSG for an umami kick. Mix it thoroughly, and we want to put it aside to incorporate the flavour a bit while we make the dumpling skin. So we've got our dough here. It's a bit of a chunky one, so we'll cut it into 4 to make it easier to work with. Put the 3 portions aside and cover it with a damp towel while we work on the first dough ball. Grab a rolling pin, and we want to roll it out to roughly 1 centimeter thick. Next, I grab my pasta maker to help me roll out the dough. I roll the dough out to setting 5, the same thickness as normal fettuccine. It should be slightly translucent, but still have enough strength to hold the fillings in. Once the dough is rolled out into a long strip, grab a mug or a cookie cutter if you do have one, and start cutting circles on the long sheet. My mug is about 8 cm in diameter, and I find it being a pretty good size. Pull away the excess dough and you'll be left with some perfectly cut dumpling wrappers. Roll the excess dough. Put it through the pasta machine and just rinse and repeat the process until all the dough is used up. Pretty straightforward. To make dumplings, grab a wrapper and scoop a heaped teaspoon of filling to put in the center of the wrapper. Prep a bowl of water on the side to dip your finger in. Apply water on half circle at the rim, and we want to fold the dry side to the wet side. To make a nice pleated dumpling, pinch the middle together, and we want to fold 2 pleats on one side and then 2 on the other. My mum taught me to fold the middle pleats together when I was a kid, and I've been doing that ever since then. Use your fingers to press the edges tight, and that is how you make dumplings. Another closer shot so you can have a good look at the pleats. I like to keep the pleats as simple as possible. The more pleats means thicker dough on the edges, and that means longer cooking time. To store dumplings, fresh dumpling skin can be sticking, so one good trick to learn is to keep them on a board or a flat lid and pop them in the freezer overnight to harden them. I pull them out the next day, and then they become much easier to work with. Throw them in a container or a freezer bag, and they are the perfect last minute backup dinner that is also super delicious. To cook dumplings, boil a pot of water and gently load them in. Give it a quick stir to make sure they don't stick to the bottom of the pot. Dumplings will float to the top once they're all cooked, the best way to tell without fail. For lunch, I cooked a good 10 dumplings with some bombok on the side. Top with some chili oil. Recipe in the description if you haven't seen it. One of my favorite condiments to have all time. The cost breakdown is as below. 700 grams of pork at $7.50 a kilo equals to $5.25. 900 grams of cabbage at $2 a head equals to $1. 500 grams of flour at $1 a kilo equals to 50 cents. 32 grams of salt at 90 cents per kilo equals to 2.88 cents. Cracks of pepper plus MSG plus sesame oil is about 25 cents. Altogether, 70 dumplings costed us $7.03 to make. For $7, you'd be getting 10 frozen ones if you buy them from supermarket, or only 6 fresh dumplings if you eat out. Alright, and there we have it. That is our dumplings done. It's actually super easy to make if you know how to make noodles, if you know how to buy mince or make mince, if you know how to chop up some really nice cabbage, really just seal them in a little pouch like a little dumpling. It's delicious. Coming from an Asian background, it's one of those things that you just always want to have in your freezer. It's perfect for students. Whenever I was churning out assignments, whenever I was having exams coming up, the last thing you want to worry about is what to eat, and you don't want to spend time cooking. And having food and having dumplings right in the freezer is just perfect for that purpose. Oh yeah, also, dipping sauce, you can just use straight soy sauce, that's perfectly fine. If you like a little bit of acidity, you can add in some vinegar as well. I am going to dig in because I'm freaking hungry. The cabbage is super crunchy, so refreshing, and the meat is just a perfect combination, perfect ratio to be the filling of the dumplings. And the dumpling skins, nothing beats a homemade dough, and it also saves you so much money compared to having to buy it from the supermarket. Seriously, if you haven't made this chili condiment, I really do encourage you to make it at home. It's a perfect companion for any noodle dishes, and it's so simple to make, saves you tons of money. Anyway, I've talked a lot and I'm going to get back to my dinner. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like and consider subscribing. I have a new video coming out on a weekly basis. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.